Holger Dansk. In Denmark, close by the Øresund, stands the old castle of Kronborg. Hundreds of ships, English, Russian, and Prussian, pass through the Sound every day and fire salutes to the old castle. Boom! Boom! And the old castle returns their salutes with cannons. For in the language of cannons, boom means good day and thank you. In the winter-time, no ships can sail by there, for then the water is frozen right across to the Swedish coast, and has quite the appearance of a high road. There the Danish and Swedish flags are streaming in the wind, and Danes and Swedes bid each other good day and thank you, not with cannons, but with cordial shaking of hands. Each comes to buy the bread and cake of the other, for you know, other people's bread and butter tastes better than one's own. But the old castle of Kronborg is by far the most beautiful sight of all. There, Holger Dansk is sitting in a deep, dark cellar, into which nobody can go. He is clad in an armor of iron and steel, and rests his head on his strong arms, and his long beard hangs down over the marble table, and has grown through it. He sleeps and dreams, but in his dream he sees all that is going on in Denmark. Every Christmas Eve an angel of God comes to him, and tells him that all he has dreamed is true, and that he might go on sleeping, as Denmark is in no real danger. But should it ever get into trouble, the old Holger Dansk will rise and burst the table in withdrawing his beard. Then he will strike with his sword, so that the dint of his strokes will be heard through all the countries of the world. An old grandfather was telling all this about Holger Dansk to his little grandson, and the little boy knew that all his grandfather said was true. While the old man spoke, he busily carved a large wooden figure intended to represent Holger Dansk and to be fixed to the prow of a ship, for he was a carver in wood, that is to say, a man who carves the figures of persons in wood, which are to be fixed to the fronts of ships according to the names they receive. Now he had carved Holger Dansk, who was standing there so proudly with his long beard, holding his broad sword in one hand, while the other rested on the Danish arms. The old man said so much about distinguished Danish men and women that it seemed to his little grandson in the end as if he knew quite as much as Holger Dansk, who after all was only dreaming. And when the child was put to bed, he thought so much about all he had heard, that he pressed his chin against the counterpane, believing he had a long beard which had grown through it. The grandfather went on working. He was carving the last part of the figure, the arms of Denmark. When he had finished, and looked at the whole, and thought of all he had read and heard of, and what he had told his little grandson, he nodded, wiped his spectacles, and put them on again, saying, "Well, well, Holger Dansk will not come in my lifetime, but the little boy there in bed may have a chance of seeing him one day, when there is really need." The old man nodded again. The more he looked at his figure of Holger Dansk, the more he was satisfied with his work. It seemed to him to become colored, and the armor to gleam like iron and steel. The hearts in the Danish arms turned more and more red, and the lions with the golden crowns on their heads were leaping. "Indeed, there is no more beautiful coat of arms in the world," said the old man. "The lions represent strength, the hearts kindness and love." He looked at the uppermost of the lions, and thought of King Canute, who subjected the great England to the Danish throne. The second lion reminded him of Waldemar, who united Denmark and conquered the Wendish territories. When he looked at the third lion, he thought of Margaret, who united Denmark with Sweden and Norway. When he looked at the red hearts, they seemed to glow more than before. They became flames which moved, and in his mind he followed each of them. The first flame led him into a narrow, dark prison. There sat a prisoner, a beautiful woman, Eleanor Ulfeld, the daughter of Christian IV, and the flame took the shape of a rose on her bosom, and became one with the heart of this noblest and best of all Danish women. "That is a heart indeed in Denmark's arms," said the old grandfather, and his mind followed the second flame far out into the sea, where the cannons roared and smoke enveloped the ships. It fixed itself in the shape of the ribbon of an order to the breast of Hvitfeldt, when he blew himself up with his ship in order to save the fleet. The third flame led him to the miserable huts in Greenland, where the missionary Hans Agede ruled in word and deed with love. The flame became a star on his breast. That was another heart of the Danish coat of arms. The old man's mind hastened on in front of the fourth flame. He knew where it would go. In the wretched room of a peasant woman stood Frederick VI, and wrote his name with chalk on a beam. The flame was burning on his breast and in his heart, and there in the peasant's room his heart became a heart of the Danish arms. The old man wiped his eyes, for he had known King Frederick, with his silvery locks and honest blue eyes, and loved him. He folded his hands and was silent for a moment. Just then the old man's daughter-in-law entered the room and said, "It is late. You must go to rest. Supper is ready." "The figure you have carved is very beautiful, Holger Dansk, and our whole old coat of arms," she continued. "I feel as if I have seen this face before." "No, that is impossible," said the grandfather, "but I have seen it, and I have endeavored to carve it in wood as I have kept it in my memory." It was when the English were in the port, on the memorable 2nd of April, when we gave proof that we were all old Danes, on board the Denmark, where I fought in the squadron of Steen Bill. There was a man by my side whom the balls seemed to fear. He merrily sang old songs and fought as if he were more than a man. I remember him still very well, but whence he came and whither he went nobody knows. I have often thought that he was perhaps Holger Dansk himself, who had swam down from Kronborg in order to help us in the hour of danger. That was my idea, and that is his likeness. And the figure cast a great shadow all over the wall and part of the ceiling. It seemed as if the real Holger Dansk was casting it, for it moved. But this might also have been caused by the flame, which did not burn steadily. And the daughter-in-law kissed the old man and led him to the big easy-chair near the table. And there she and the old man's son, who was the father of the little boy in bed, had their supper. The grandfather spoke of the Danish lions and the Danish hearts, of their strength and kindness. He declared that there existed yet another strength besides that of the sword. He pointed to the shelves filled with old books, where Holberg's comedies stood, which were so much read and so amusing. It seemed almost as if all the persons of bygone days could be recognized in them. He too knew how to strike a blow, said the grandfather, for he ridiculed as much as he could the follies and prejudices of the people. Then the grandfather nodded towards the looking-glass where the almanac with the picture of the round tower was hanging, and said, Tycho Brahe was also a man who made use of the sword, not to cut flesh and bone, but to make the path on the sky through the stars more distinct. And he, whose father belonged to my trade, the old woodcarver's son, he whom we have seen with his white curls and broad shoulders, he who is known all over the world, he could shape the stone, but I can only carve wood. Well, well, Holger Dansk can appear in many shapes, so that all the world hears of Denmark's strength. Let us drink Bertel's health. The little boy in bed saw distinctly the old castle of Kronborg and the Øresund, the real Holger Dansk, who was sitting deep below with his beard grown to the marble table, and dreaming of all that happens here above. Holger Dansk was also dreaming of the humble little room where the woodcarver sat. He heard all that was said, and nodded in his dream, saying, "Yes, remember me, ye Danish people. Keep me in your memory. I shall return to you in the hour of danger." And outside before the Kronborg the bright day shined. The wind carried the sounds of the bugle over from the neighboring country. The ships sailed by and saluted, boom, boom. And from the Kronborg it echoed, boom, boom. But Holger Dansk did not awake, however strong the cannons roared, for it was only good day and thank you. They must fire more strongly if they wish to wake him up, but one day he will wake up, for there is still life in Holger Dansk.